Corner a human. That's like poking a bear with a stick. Only this bear invented nukes, sarcasm, and the concept of barbecue. The Alliance didn't know it yet, but they just volunteered for the wrong picnic. Cornering a human is like backing a cat into a box. It won't scratch right away. It waits. It watches. Then, when you lean too close, you remember claws exist. The Galactic Alliance hadn't learned that lesson yet. Today they were about to. The Alliance's grand chamber glittered like a monument to arrogance. Rings of alien delegates filled the stadium-sized hall, a kaleidoscope of scaled, feathered, gelatinous, and chitin-armored species. Overhead, a domed ceiling projected the spiraling arms of the galaxy itself, as though to remind everyone of their self-proclaimed dominion. At the center of it all stood a single human. Captain Elias Monroe. He wasn't armored, wasn't escorted, and carried nothing but a slim datapad in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. He stood as though this place, filled with representatives who hated his species, were merely a train station back home. Calm, polite, borderline cheerful. The council's presiding voice, a six-limbed avian called Speaker Dravik, spread his wings and screeched for silence. Humanity stands accused of destabilizing sectors, refusing tariffs, and weaponizing unpredictability. You are cornered, Captain Monroe. Your fleet surrounded, your colonies blockaded. Today, you submit, or you are erased. Murmurs of approval rippled through the assembly. Monroe sipped his coffee. He let the silence stretch, then said mildly, "Submit? That's a bold offer. Though I must say, Speaker, I admire your optimism." Laughter, sharp and mocking, rolled from certain benches. Others frowned, confused. The humans were supposed to beg, not banter. A reptilian warlord slammed his clawed fist onto the desk. "Your species is finished. How dare you mock this council?" Monroe's smile didn't fade. "Mocking? Not at all. You've gone to great trouble. Fleets, sanctions, speeches. That's a lot of paperwork just for little old us." "I'm flattered." Gasps, scattered hisses. Some delegates exchanged wary looks. Humans had a way of talking that always felt sideways. A mollusk-like minister gurgled through a translator, "You are surrounded. There is no escape." Monroe tilted his head. "Surrounded? You might want to double-check that. Corners can be tricky things. Sometimes it's the one waiting there you should worry about." The words hung like a shadow over the chamber. Speaker Dravik snapped his wings. "Enough riddles. The Alliance will not tolerate further insolence. Humanity has one chance to surrender its fleets and colonies." Monroe took another sip. His calmness was infuriating to them. He tapped the datapad lightly. "I do have a counteroffer, if you're interested. It's short, I promise." The delegates leaned forward, curious despite themselves. "Don't," Monroe said simply. The chamber erupted in noise, outrage, disbelief, confusion. A dozen voices screamed demands, a dozen more called for his arrest. Through the uproar, Monroe stood unflinching, almost amused. He could have been discussing weather patterns instead of galactic ultimatums. When the chamber quieted, he added, "You've mistaken our silence for weakness. But silence, gentlemen, is just strategy taking its time." The insectoid delegate clicked his mandibles nervously. "Empty words. Humans lack the fleets to resist." Monroe smiled faintly. "Ah, fleets. Yes, about that." He stopped himself, shaking his head as though scolding his own tongue. "No, never mind. Spoilers ruin the story." The delegates shifted, unease prickling in the chamber. A younger aquatic species representative whispered loudly, "Why isn't he afraid?" The elder beside him muttered, "Because they never are. That's what makes them dangerous." The speaker slammed down his gavel staff. "Captain Monroe, you will return to your government with the Alliance's ultimatum. One cycle to surrender. After that, obliteration." Monroe bowed slightly. It was respectful, even graceful. Yet the smile never touched his eyes. One cycle. Generous. I'll pass along your message. Though, I should warn you, humanity doesn't react well to deadlines. And with that, he walked out, coffee still in hand. Outside the chamber, aides from neutral species followed, desperate for answers. One, a small, rodent-like scholar, scurried beside him. Captain, forgive the question, but, are you truly cornered? They've mobilized thousands of ships. Monroe glanced at him, amused. Thousands, yes. But tell me, did you notice how proud they are of the number? They think in quantity. Humans? We think in quality and timing. The aide blinked, confused. Then you're planning something. Monroe chuckled. Let's just say the Alliance thinks they're playing chess. They don't realize humanity invented poker, and we're holding the aces. Meanwhile, back inside the chamber, unease spread. A few delegates replayed Monroe's words, sensing layers they couldn't decipher. Others dismissed him as bluffing. The reptilian warlord hissed. They have nothing. Just words. When the cycle ends, Earth burns. But the wise elder of the crystalline species spoke quietly, each word like glass cutting the air. No. Listen carefully. That human walked into this hall alone. No guards, no weapons, no fear. Either he is mad, or we are already in his trap. Silence. The thought hung there, unwanted yet undeniable. On his shuttle leaving the station, Monroe stood by the viewport, watching stars stretch into lines. His aide finally asked the question gnawing at him. Captain, what happens when the cycle ends? Monroe's smile returned, slow and sharp. When it ends, that's when the real show begins. The Alliance wasted no time. Within a day of Monroe's council appearance, their fleets swept across human trade lanes. Patrol lines tightened like a net, and every broadcast channel declared the same message: humanity is contained. Resistance is futile. The galaxy listened. Most believed it. Some laughed at the spectacle of humans, trapped. A few, the wiser few, didn't laugh at all. On Earth's orbital defense ring, Admiral Harrington leaned against the railing, eyes on the holographic map. Glowing red arcs, the Alliance fleets, curved around human territory like jaws. He tapped the railing once. Looks impressive, doesn't it? Captain Monroe stood beside him, still holding coffee, as if the galaxy's greatest blockade was nothing more than background noise. Impressive, yes. Effective? Not really. You ever notice how the loudest poker players usually have the worst hands? Harrington's brow furrowed. They have numbers. 10-1. Monroe's smile never faltered. 10-1's not terrible odds. It just means fewer targets for us to miss. The Admiral shook his head but didn't argue. He'd known Monroe long enough to understand the man played a different game. Out in the void, Alliance fleets pressed their advantage. A squadron of sleek Vraxian warships intercepted a human cargo vessel. The freighter's crew surrendered quickly, transmitting compliance codes. The Vraxian commander strutted across the bridge, basking in the illusion of dominance. Then he checked the cargo manifest. Crates of... what is this? Rubber ducks. The crew nodded solemnly. Special export. Very fragile. The Vraxian sneered and ordered the crates opened. Thousands of bright yellow ducks spilled out, bobbing and squeaking in 0G. The sound system auto-triggered a human song, "Rubber Ducky, you're the one." The commander roared in fury, but the galaxy saw it. Broadcasts spread. The Alliance's mighty interception became a comedy clip overnight. Monroe had arranged it personally. Back at Alliance High Command, tempers flared. This is an insult. The reptilian warlord snarled. His scaled fist slammed the war table. We demand blood, not toys. Speaker Dravik tried to calm him, but the damage was done. The galaxy laughed, not at humanity, but at the Alliance for taking the bait. The crystalline elder spoke quietly, ignored as usual. Do you not see? The humans invite your attention. They want to be mocked. This is camouflage. No one listened. On a secure channel, Monroe debriefed Earth's War Council. "They're playing into our hands beautifully. Every blockade, every seizure, they're feeding the narrative. Humanity's weak, harmless, outmatched. The Alliance believes it, and belief is the most dangerous blindfold of all." A junior officer frowned. "But sir, aren't they cutting our supply lines? Won't this starve us out?" Monroe leaned forward, eyes glinting. "If you're worried about supplies, you don't understand. We were never planning to eat what they thought they trapped." Confusion rippled through the room, but Monroe didn't clarify. Days passed. Skirmishes erupted along the blockade. The Alliance expected panic, desperate human ships trying to break through. Instead, they got games. At one sector, a human destroyer lured an alien cruiser into an asteroid field, then projected false sensor echoes. The cruiser fired wildly at phantoms until its own missiles ricocheted back. At another, human pilots painted Alliance hulls with graffiti in bold white letters, "Free parking." Alliance commanders fumed. Their superiors demanded order. But the more they tried to tighten the noose, the more humanity slipped through with laughter and tricks. One late cycle, Monroe stood in Earth's underground command center, watching news feeds. Alliance propaganda dominated the airwaves, human resistance crushed. "Only days remain." He chuckled softly. "Something funny?" Admiral Harrington asked. Monroe sipped his coffee. "Yes. They think the story's about them. But they're just background characters in ours." The Admiral sighed. "Care to let me in on the punchline?" "Soon," Monroe said. "Spoilers, remember?" Meanwhile, in a hidden sector far from Earth, something stirred. Massive human ships, black-hulled and silent, drifted in stealth formations. No beacons, no signals. Entire fleets cloaked by clever engineering and void dark plating. Each ship bore markings not seen in public records. Ghost fleets, forgotten by the galaxy, quietly waiting. Their commanders received coded signals. Short, polite, unmistakably human. "Hold position. Patience is a virtue." Back in Alliance space, paranoia spread. Reports trickled in, convoys disappearing, communication lines disrupted, starbases raided with surgical precision. Always the same signature, human fingerprints, yet no human fleet had been spotted. Alien generals argued. Some insisted it was impossible. Others whispered that humans were everywhere. In one council meeting, the mollusk minister gurgled nervously, "They laugh when we threaten. They laugh when we attack. What creature laughs at annihilation?" The crystalline elder answered coldly, "Predators." One evening, Monroe walked into a strategy briefing late, carrying 2 coffees. He handed one to Harrington, who raised a brow. "You're oddly calm," the Admiral muttered. Monroe grinned. "Calm? I'm ecstatic. We've reached the part of the movie where the villains explain their plan." "You mean us?" Harrington asked. "No," Monroe said, sipping. "Them. They're showing all their cards. We just have to wait for the moment they think they've won. That's when the trap closes." The Admiral stared at him. "And what exactly is the trap?" Monroe gave the same maddening smile he'd worn at the council. "Patience, Admiral. Poker, remember." The cycle's deadline crept closer. The Alliance tightened its grip, convinced victory was days away. Their broadcasts grew louder, more triumphant. And humanity? Humanity laughed. Not because they were blind to danger. Not because they didn't feel the weight of 10 fleets pressing in. But because Captain Elias Monroe had set the board long before the Alliance even realized there was a game. And the punchline was coming. The cycle's final day arrived with the gravity of prophecy. Across the galaxy, Alliance broadcasts declared triumph. Humanity cornered. Resistance broken. Tomorrow, Earth surrenders. But inside humanity's command center, the atmosphere was almost festive. Coffee machines hissed. Pilots swapped jokes. Engineers took bets on how long the Alliance fleet would last once things began. At the center of it all, Captain Elias Monroe leaned against the holotable, expression unreadable. He stirred his coffee absently as though orchestrating galaxy-wide chaos were no different than a morning routine. Admiral Harrington broke the calm. "They're ready to strike. 10 fleets positioned at choke points, thousands of ships aligned. Once the deadline passes, they'll burn us down." Monroe nodded. "Good. It means they're exactly where I need them." The Admiral's patience finally cracked. "You've been smiling since the blockade started. What have you been hiding?" Monroe's eyes glinted. "Everything." Far above Earth, the Alliance fleets gathered. Rows of alien warships blotted out the stars, sleek, angular, bristling with weapons. Inside their flagships, commanders congratulated themselves, toasting the imminent fall of a troublesome species. A Vraxian general hissed over the intercom, "The humans will learn what happens when vermin defy an empire." Another added, "Their colonies will burn first. Then their homeworld." Laughter, cold and cruel, echoed across command decks. Then, silence. The laughter froze as a ripple of distortion swept across their sensors. Dozens of massive shadows appeared where no ships should be. A second ripple followed, then a third. Decloaking. The void bloomed with human warships, black, jagged, colossal. Not the battered fleets the Alliance thought cornered, but vessels unseen in centuries. Ghost fleets, long hidden in the dark. Their hulls shimmered with adaptive plating, their weapons charged in eerie silence. They had been waiting, watching, and now they had arrived. Alliance bridges erupted with panic. "Impossible! Where did they come from? Our scans detected nothing. Those ships, those designs aren't even in the archives." One officer's voice broke. "We're not the hunters. We're the bait." In Earth's command center, Admiral Harrington stared at the live feed, mouth dry. How long were they out there?" Monroe sipped his coffee, unbothered. "Long enough." The Admiral turned to him sharply. "You used our colonies as bait." Monroe finally allowed himself a thin smile. "Correct. The Alliance wanted to corner us. We gave them a corner so perfect they couldn't resist. And now every one of their fleets is exposed." Harrington shook his head in disbelief. "Do you realize the audacity of this plan?" Monroe's gaze never left the screen. Audacity is just confidence before the results come in. The first strike came without warning. Human dreadnoughts cut through the blockade lines with precision, weapons firing in synchronized bursts. Alliance cruisers disintegrated under barrages that seemed almost effortless. But worse than the firepower was the broadcast. Every human ship transmitted a calm, polite message across all frequencies. "Attention Alliance forces. You are advised to stand down. Resistance is hazardous to your health. Thank you for your cooperation." The tone was almost cheerful. Customer service at the end of the world. Aliens heard it and felt cold dread. The humans weren't enraged, weren't desperate. They were calm, amused even. Predators playing with their food. On the flagship of the reptilian warlord, chaos reigned. "Regroup. Fire everything," he bellowed. His gunners obeyed, unleashing torrents of plasma. But human ships didn't fight fair. They shifted formations unpredictably, baited the enemy into crossfire, and used asteroid shadows as cover. Every Alliance maneuver was anticipated, countered, undone. A younger officer stammered, They knew we'd be here. Every movement, every fleet. It's like they wanted this exact fight." The warlord froze. The realization was unbearable. Back in the chamber of the Alliance Council, emergency reports flooded in. Screens lit with fire, fleets shattered, commanders screaming. Speaker Dravik screeched, "This cannot be." They were surrounded. The crystalline elder spoke softly, voice like shards breaking. "No. We are surrounded." The words fell like a verdict. On the front lines, human pilots relished the chaos. "Target down. 2 for 2. Make it 3. They're lining up like bowling pins. Bowling pins? An alien voice intercepted, baffled. Don't worry, the human replied, blasting another cruiser. You wouldn't get it. They laughed as they fought, half banter, half slaughter. And that laughter carried farther than any weapon. In the middle of the storm, Monroe gave no grand speech. No raised fist, no declaration of vengeance. Instead, he simply instructed, hold formation. Hit their supply nodes. Let their panic do the work. His voice was steady, almost casual. That calmness, more than the gunfire, broke the alliance. Hours later, the void burned. Entire fleets, once the pride of the alliance, drifted in ruin. Human warships pressed deeper, cutting trade arteries, isolating sectors, dismantling what had seemed untouchable. The trap was no longer theory. It was reality. And the galaxy, watching through intercepted feeds, understood. Humanity hadn't been the prey. They had been the hunters all along. In the aftermath of the first day's battle, Harrington finally exhaled. They'll never recover from this. Monroe set down his empty coffee cup. Not in one piece, no. But we're not finished. The Alliance thought they cornered us. What they don't realize is we've cornered them. And tomorrow, we close the box. The council chamber's silence was the kind you could hear. Dozens of alien dignitaries, scaled, feathered, silicon, and steel-skinned, watched the holographic display above the central dais. Human ships, tiny in number compared to the Alliance armada, drifted calmly at the edge of the Trinarian rift. The rift was no ordinary battleground. It was a graveyard of collapsed stars, a maze of gravity wells, and spatial fractures that even the Alliance avoided. A no-fly zone, except for fools, or predators who wanted it to look that way. Ambassador Marcus Vale folded his hands neatly behind his back. He looked unassuming, the kind of man who might teach history in a quiet university town. His suit was crisp, his smile perfectly polite. But his voice, when it carried across the chamber, cut sharper than any blade. You wish to corner us, he began, tone almost conversational. And yet, you drove your fleets into the one place we've mapped more thoroughly than we've mapped our own oceans. A ripple of unease stirred among the alien leaders. The Ursine warlord growled. Empty words. Your fleet is outnumbered 100 to 1. Politeness will not save you. Marcus nodded, as if acknowledging the point in a lecture. Quite right. Politeness rarely saves anyone. But traps? Traps do wonders. At that cue, the hologram shifted. Lines of light traced paths through the rift. Gravitational eddies, dead zones, escape corridors. To the aliens it looked like chaos. To Marcus, it was a chessboard with all but 2 squares blocked. The Vayari delegate, translucent skin glowing faintly, leaned forward. You cannot mean, you brought us here deliberately? Mean it. Marcus chuckled softly. I begged you to come. Not in words, of course, humans prefer subtlety. We leaked just enough intelligence. Let your pride do the heavy lifting. You moved your fleets exactly where we needed them. Gasps, clicks, and metallic hisses filled the chamber. The holo updated again, showing Alliance ships unknowingly arrayed along fault lines of unstable space. One misstep would shred whole formations. The Zyrek admiral, insectoid mandibles snapping, tried to sneer. Bluff. No species would gamble with annihilation. Marcus's eyes sharpened, polite mask intact. Every species gambles. Humanity just learned to count cards faster. And then it began. Outside the chamber, in the rift itself, the human fleet shifted formation. Only a handful of cruisers moved, but their vectors set off a chain reaction. Gravitational tethers tightened, mines hidden in the rift's dark folds activated, and dormant satellites came online, projecting false escape routes. The Alliance ships, unaware of the lattice tightening around them, adjusted positions, and with each movement, they locked themselves deeper into the web. On the chamber floor, Admiral Karath, scaled skin glinting, rose to his full height. Release our fleets. Now. Marcus tilted his head. Release? Admiral, you're misunderstanding. We never captured them. You captured yourselves. We just arranged the furniture. The casual delivery cut deeper than any open threat. The chamber broke into overlapping shouts. Some demanded immediate withdrawal. Others argued that retreat was impossible without losses. A few, those sharp enough to see the full picture, sat in stunned silence. Marcus raised a hand, and the chaos dwindled. His voice remained calm, almost friendly. You thought humans desperate, cornered. But desperation isn't what drives us. Calculation does. We're not lions fighting to the death. We're engineers building the cage while smiling at the zookeeper. For the first time, laughter, dark, unmistakably human, echoed through the chamber. The aliens recoiled at the sound, not because it was loud, but because it carried certainty. On the display, the first Alliance dreadnought made a fatal maneuver. It veered into a supposed escape corridor, only for the space around it to shear open like glass under pressure. Gravity tore the ship apart in seconds, scattering burning fragments into the void. A murmur of horror rolled through the delegates. Marcus didn't flinch. Unfortunate, but entirely predictable. That's why I advised against rash moves. Humans are patient. We spent decades learning the rift's patterns. While you debated who would lead your coalition, we charted every fold, every shadow. We know where a whisper of thrust becomes a death sentence. The insectoid admiral hissed. You wouldn't dare destroy an entire fleet. It would unite the galaxy against you. Marcus leaned forward, voice dropping to a near whisper. Admiral, the galaxy already united against us. You just didn't account for what happens when the cornered animal is the one building the walls. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Marcus straightened, polite smile returning. We don't want your extinction. We don't even want your planets. What we want is respect. Genuine, earned, and permanent. Withdraw. Leave humanity unchallenged, and this little demonstration ends with your fleets intact. A reptilian envoy snarled. And if we refuse? Marcus's eyes gleamed, steel behind the civility. Then you will learn what it feels like when the trap doesn't merely snap shut, but keeps tightening. As if to emphasize his words, the holo updated again. More Alliance ships drifted toward invisible hazards, unaware they were steps away from annihilation. The chamber was now split between those demanding immediate retreat and those too arrogant, or too terrified, to admit defeat. One elder alien, a scholar with eyes like liquid silver, finally spoke. You have turned the rift itself into a weapon. Marcus inclined his head slightly. Not a weapon. A mirror. It shows the difference between those who prepare and those who posture. The remark landed harder than any explosion. Outside, comms lit up as Alliance admirals barked contradictory orders. Fleets collided, stumbled into hazards, burned engines trying to escape non-existent corridors. In mere minutes, the galaxy's greatest armada was unraveling, not by brute force, but by its own weight against human precision. And still Marcus stood serene, as though discussing the weather at a dinner party. The Ursine warlord slammed his clawed hand on the table. You are monsters. Marcus's smile sharpened. No, warlord. Monsters lash out blindly. We prefer design. The chamber doors hissed open as a human officer entered, saluting crisply. Ambassador, the Alliance fleets are entangled. Our ships await further instruction. Marcus turned back to the assembly, tone almost cheerful. Well, esteemed colleagues, it appears the game is over. The trap has snapped shut. The only question left is whether you prefer to walk away bruised or broken. The silence that followed was no longer just fear. It was recognition. Recognition that humanity, smiling, joking, polite humanity, had just rewritten the rules of galactic war.